the math lesson, what do we need to do this next week? And it was just really, 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 really key that you gave me that time. But we did come across a secret. How effective is it for dad to watch the kids in the house when mom is trying to do the planning time?
Sadly, it's not always effective.
It's not always effective. It's like never effective.
Well, you have to. Welcome to the show called Let's Talk Homeschool, brought to you by Apologia Educational Ministries. This is the show where we talk about everything homeschooling: the who, what, when, where, why, and how. We want to affirm and encourage you in the decision to homeschool, challenge and inspire you to take it to new heights, and celebrate everything you get to experience along the way in this adventure of a lifetime. We are your hosts, Davis and Rachael Carman, and today's show is titled Doing Family, Part 12 of 12. This is the conclusion. Okay, Rachel, let's talk homeschool.
Here we go.
So last year in 23, we started a 12-part series called Doing Family. We typically do a series once a year, and last year was no exception. We are now concluding that series. There were 10 themes that we talked about. We started with an introduction, and today is the conclusion where we're going to briefly look at each of those 10 themes to give everybody a snapshot and get the whole thing in one podcast. So let's just start with the very first one, Rachel. Planning night for mom. How essential was that to doing family well?
It was huge for us. I think it actually was a real game changer because as a homeschool mom, the constant pressure to do the next thing, to clean up the latest mess, to get something done is just overwhelming. And you really need a time every week where you can get your head around what you did, what needs to be done, what you're going to do. You just need some bandwidth, some breathing space. And it's just not possible with all these little people demanding your attention. And you want to pay attention to them, but you need to spend some time with your lesson plan book and you need to sharpen pencils. And so you were really good on Sunday night. And I really loved that it was Sunday night because it was at the beginning of the week. Clearly, it could be any day of the week, but I was really grateful it was Sunday night. And you would take the kids and I could go into our school space and literally spend some time, sometimes mourning over my lesson plan because I didn't really get much done, or celebrating. Either way, taking a look at where we've been and where we're going, seeing what I need to organize, what I need to straighten up, literally sharpening pencils, right? And just sort of making sense out of the week before, planning the pages I'm going to read, looking at the math lesson, what do we need to do this next week? And it was just really, 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 really key that you gave me that time. But we did come across a secret. How effective is it for dad to watch the kids in the house when mom is trying to do the planning time?
Sadly, it's not always effective.
It's not always effective. It's like never effective.
Well, you have to be crazy diligent about this as a dad. So, like you say, when Awana was on Sunday night, I would take the kids to Awana. We left the house. Mm-hmm. I had them the whole time,
right,
and there was not going to be an interruption of any kind. Yeah. And we'd come back 3 hours later, tuck all the kids in bed.
It was glorious, I'm just going to say. Those
were my favorite times when Awana was on Sunday night. But there were other times during the course of raising kids over 26 years that Awana was on Wednesday night.
Yeah.
And so what did we do on Sunday night then? Well, I typically had father-kid night.
Yeah.
And I had all the kids, and I refused to just plop them in front of a video and let them veg while I did something else. I took it as a time to be intentional with my kids. And, in this idealistic world, I'm going outside and playing games with them and doing things. Even in the winter, we might play some indoor games, and I'd teach them some things that were kind of ad hoc or extracurricular outside of the normal things that we were doing in our homeschool. For instance, I taught them the Greek alphabet, the Hebrew alphabet, and we did things like that. They were a little eccentric of sorts and off the
But the
normal
key
path.
is that you really had to have the kids.
I had to have them because inevitably with 7 kids, even if I have them all outside playing, somebody would wander inside to find mom.
Right.
And I'd find out about
Yeah.
it later, and I just felt horrible when they interrupted you. So there were times when we're finishing up a game, I got them all corralled, I can see all of them, I know they're with me and not, wandering off to find you. And they'd be finishing up cleaning, or they're finishing their meal, or getting ready for bed. And I would literally sit on a couch in front of our master bedroom, guarding the door,
Right.
because somebody would undoubtedly traipse on towards the door, and I'd say, "What are you doing here?" "Oh, I just need to see mom for a minute." "No, you don't." And I'd send them away, because it's amazing how the magnet happens when they just know exactly where you are. And so, Dad, you've got to literally protect mom. Just give her 3 hours of time alone to really exhale, do some planning, get it done.
Well, and I don't even want to put a time on it. I mean, 3 hours was
Right.
awesome. It was great. So that's great. But I just think, husbands, if you're looking for a way to really bless your mom, your wife, and the mom of your children, and I'm going to say especially if she's a homeschool mom, because she's with the kids 24/7, this is a very simple, inexpensive, but powerful way that you can communicate to her how much you value her, how much you appreciate what she's doing, and how much you realize that this could be a game changer for her. And so giving her some time, and I'm going to say in the house without anybody around. I mean, literally the best times are when you took the kids away from the house, because for a mom, just hearing them, I can remember times when you did have them corralled, but one of my kids was crying, and I can't stay doing what I need. I need to come out and help patch somebody up, right? So I just think that Sunday night planning was key.
Right. So that was lesson number one, theme number one. Number two, morning routines. So 4 of these 10 have a strong Deuteronomy 6 connection. This one clearly does, because in Deuteronomy 6, parents are told to teach their kids to love God with all their heart, soul, mind, and strength. And then Deuteronomy 6 gives 4 times applications when you can make this happen: when you rise up, when you lie down, when you sit, and when you walk along the way. So morning routines clearly falls into one of the 4 awesome opportunities to have a Deuteronomy 6 moment, to make it special, to be intentional as a parent, to do family well.
Right.
So our morning routines looked like us coming into the bedroom, turning on the light, opening the shades. Rachel was great about coming in with a song. She has a beautiful voice. She would sing some songs. We'd recite the psalm that says, "This is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it." And we'd just talk about all that God might have planned for them to experience, to do, to discover, to learn today.
Right. It was a great way to set the tone for the day, right? And I think parents, that is a job that we have that we ought to take more seriously, and that is we can frame the day for our kids. Some kids wake up very joyfully. We've got a couple that just wake up happy. We've got a couple not so much, right? And so helping them step into the day with all of its possibilities is something that can actually literally do for them to just help set the tone going forward for that day. So yeah, sometimes I would go in and rub somebody's back, or scratch somebody's back, or scratch somebody's head, but really, not forcing them, not this loud alarm, but this really pleasant stepping into the new day. We found that to be very helpful.
Yes. All right. Number 3, family worship. Now, I still consider this one of the top pieces of advice I would give to homeschool families today. Make sure you have a family worship built into your routine.
Yeah.
You can call it family devotions. You can call it Bible time. We called it family worship because of it described very well what we were trying to do to instill a love for God.
Right.
Now, there were times when we did this in the morning before I left for work, when I was going to an office. There were times we did this in the evening before going to bed. It varied depending on the age of the kids, what my work situation looked like, and just what we wanted the day to look like. Mm-hmm. And it was usually pretty simple. We would read the scripture from the Bible book that we were in at the time. We'd talk about it, have a conversation, answer some questions. We would definitely sing some songs, and there's nothing like hearing a young one sing songs.
Right.
And then one of the pivotal, moving portions of our time was we would literally get on our knees and we would pray. And those are just precious memories in
Yeah,
my
I
mind
agree.
when we would spend that time together in family worship. Now, I will say we weren't perfectly consistent doing this. There were days we missed, but just like I'm going to admit and confess, there were days I didn't brush my kids' teeth before I put them to bed. But my kids grew up thinking that they grew up in a house that brushed their teeth.
Right.
Just like they grew up in a home that they considered we do family worship. It's just part of our DNA, part of our culture, part of how we move, what our rhythms and routines look like.
Mm-hmm. It's just invaluable, especially for a family to come together, to be on their knees together. We had a song that we would sing before we do that, which I will not sing for you today. But the power for kids to see their mom and their dad on their knees with them, and the little kids, I still have images, freeze frames in my memory of all of us being on our knees together. So that was another way that we set the tone for the day.
Right. All right, number 4 in our list of 10 was obedience training. So if you have young ones, you are in the trenches trying to help them do it. Ephesians 6:1. Yeah. Honor and obey their parents in the Lord, for this is good for them. Mm-hmm. It's good for their souls. It's good for the family. That's what you want in their relationship with God.
Yeah.
This is vital. Now, there's definitely some pitfalls that parents fall into today. Mm-hmm. And it's so often to let the kids run the show rather than being the parent. Right. And so some practical advice I would give you that we gave in that show was don't ask the question, okay.
Right.
Don't give a command and then say, okay, let's get in the car now, okay? Time for everybody to come down for dinner, okay? No, you cannot be timid. You cannot ask the question. The response is, yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. The statement, yes, sir, or yes, ma'am, starts building in to this thinking and this lesson for the kids that this isn't a question for them to decide.
Right.
They've just been told something they need to obey. And you were great at teaching the kids some specifics, basically definition of obedience, that it's the first time joyfully, thoroughly, without complaining.
Right.
And that we got to teach that many times when the kids were young.
Yeah, and there's a myriad of examples in Scripture where God required obedience the first time, when he required it completely, when he required it joyfully, and when he required it without complaint. I don't need to fill in those blanks for you. Maybe that's a homework assignment for you, but this is completely biblical. And I think it's important for parents to catch a vision for how important this is. It's not just about your kids obeying you. It's about training your kids to obey him. And so it is important that your kids learn to obey you the first time, without question, without complaint, completely and thoroughly the first time. All of those things need to be interwoven in this practice of obedience, especially the little ones, right? And obviously there comes a time, and Susanna Wesley was huge about this. She taught and advocated for teaching your littles to obey without question. And then as they get older, once they've learned obedience without question, then you come into more conversations about it, right? But today, I think parents give their kids the okay question's huge, and then too many options. The option is obedience or disobedience. That's your option. And so training your kids to obey you matters in their ultimate relationship with obeying God.
And related to that is don't count to 3. Right. Because that's basically just saying, you have a choice here. I'm going to let you disobey if you want, and I'll count to 3 for that to happen. No, from the very beginning, you need to obey.
Right.
Yes, sir. And that's how it goes, as opposed to letting the kids be in charge.
And it is training, right? So again, and this next comment is applicable to lots of different things that we talk about. If we ever are able to commandeer pixie dust or magic wands, we will sell them. But what we're talking about in this training, this is an ongoing process. This is something that's every day in 1,000 different circumstances in your home, whether it is changing the toilet paper or being nice to their sister or closing the door. These are things that you're constantly training them on obedience. So this isn't something that you do once and then it's done. It's something that you're continually doing, continually reminding them the importance of this.
Right. So don't grow weary, parents.
Right.
You will reap a reward if you stick with it and remain faithful. All right, number 5 on our list was meal times. This is another one of the Deuteronomy 6 moments where you're sitting down together, and meal times provide a fantastic opportunity to do family.
Right.
And since the kitchen is primarily your domain, I'm going to let you start this conversation.
Well, you get 3 meals a day. And so as the mom, often you get all 3 meals with your kids. If you're really blessed, we had you for breakfast even when you were going to the office, which was awesome. But meal times are 3 different times in the day where you can sort of exhale and decompress. How you doing, refuel, talk about where you are, and maybe build excitement for the next thing you're going to do. Or maybe at lunchtime it was getting ready for reading time and a nap. Breakfast was the excitement of the day. Dinner was Dad's home. And so at dinner, I tried to really loop Davis into what we had done that day. So we did an experiment, or we read about so-and-so, or whatever we did that day. We talked about nouns, and the kids would want to talk about nouns. I mean, really taking the chance to loop Dad back into what you accomplished all that day. With this suggestion, I wouldn't use it as a time to tell on any of the kids. So anybody who had an especially rough day, whether it was relationally or academically, or just was grumpy that day, that is a private conversation between you and your husband. That is not a dinner conversation. And I would say not just those issues, but don't even allow it amongst your children. This ought to be a positive time where we're reinforcing each other and encouraging each other and celebrating what we've done all day long, being grateful for who God is.
Right. And the mealtime should not be something that's come and go. This is something you do as a family. You all get there, you start at the same time, you stay together, and then you finish, and then there's probably some cleanup activities that continue as part of this mealtime.
Right.
But one of the things that took a while, meaning it took a lot of time when we were at the table, that's when we practice our memory verses. Mm-hmm. And we'd go around the table several times. Everybody had different verses depending on where they were in Awana or what other work we were doing in school. And so that just happened to be one of the things we used the meal times for.
Right.
All right. We're going to take a quick break. Thank you for listening, but we'll be right back to this discussion. Right now, I want to tell you about Apologia Math. Homeschool moms are raving about Apologia's Exploring Creation with Mathematics curriculum, calling it a total game changer. With hands-on math activities and games, short 30-minute lessons, an open and go format, and a suggested 4-day week schedule, you and your children will love Apologia's math curriculum. One mom said, "I think I finally found it. I've been searching for years for the perfect math curriculum, something hands-on that has short lessons and has everything laid out in an easy-to-use parent manual for me." Apologia knocked it out of the park with this one. So many homeschool families have switched to Apologia Math after struggling with other curricular choices and have seen their children become excited about math for the first time. Visit apologia.com/math today and discover why so many homeschoolers are switching to Apologia Math. I wish we had that when our kids were younger.
I know. I'm glad you developed it for other families, but boy, that would have been handy for your math challenged wife to use. That would have been awesome.
All right, so we are doing part 12 of 12 in our Doing Family series. We're wrapping it up by quickly going through all 10 themes that we covered. We covered the first 5 already. Planning time for mom each week, morning routines, family worship, obedience training, and meal times. And now we're going to do the second 5. So Rachel, family traditions. A lot of great memories. And mom often can set the temperature and the traditions that come into play either as they happen naturally or intentionally. So talk to us a little bit about what we covered in family traditions.
Yeah, this is another one of those things that I could live in a lot of regret that I didn't do it better, right? I didn't come from a family that had a lot of traditions seasonally through the whole year, but I caught kind of a vision for it early on in our homeschool journey and our family journey. And so we wanted to create a family culture. And moms, I really think that that's the role that we have in our families. We have lots of roles, but I think a really huge one for moms is we get to create the family culture. And one of the things that I endeavored to do was really celebrate birthdays well. So one of our traditions was if it was your birthday, it was your day. The kids got to choose breakfast, lunch, and dinner and their birthday dessert, right? And we celebrated them. We would go in, one of our traditions was on birthday, they stayed in bed, right? They had the luxury of staying in bed, and we would all get up and get everything ready for their breakfast. And then we would go up to their bedroom and sing them happy birthday when they were still in bed. That's pretty glorious, right? And then they came down. Often their responsibilities for the day were taken by different siblings as sort of a birthday gift. Like I said, they got to plan all 3 meals, which was a lot of fun. And then we always, for a really long time, I think it was forever, we took pictures of each child with their birthday presents that they got, which was always a lot of fun to look back on. So we did that for just for birthdays. We often celebrated Valentine's very much family centered on loving each other. So we would do something really special. One year, the kids served us dinner, so we lit candles. But before that, we would light candles and celebrate Valentine's as a family. But the biggest season was the fall. My favorite holiday is actually Thanksgiving. And so we would do a Thanksgiving tree, and we would talk about all the things that we were thankful for. And I've talked about that on my webpage. I'm sorry, I just went brain dead. And we've talked about that here too. But then Christmas, we stepped into Advent. So really all year long, just having these family traditions. And now as they're launched and they're building their own families, seeing them carry those forward has been pretty awesome.
Well, it is. I mean, most people, when they're adults and they look back on their childhood, they think of the family traditions.
Yeah.
I think they also think of the meal times. But family traditions are the ones that they say, wow, Christmas was always fantastic. Mm-hmm. Or Thanksgiving, wow, we did that so good.
Yeah.
And I can't remember a birthday where I wasn't celebrated.
Yeah.
Things like that. I think that's what family traditions do, is they create a memory for a person that says family is good.
Yeah.
I grew up in a loving, secure, safe, beautiful family.
Yeah.
And that's what family traditions can do.
Yeah.
All right, number 7 was activities. This is the third of our Deuteronomy 6 pieces. Out of the 4 times that Deuteronomy 6 says you can teach your kids to love God. And so this is when you're on the way.
Yeah.
So back then it was walking. Then it changed to riding horses and covered wagons. Now it's often in the van.
Right.
You're going to and fro between activities. And what was at least one very important thing we did regarding activities? Because this is a place where families can easily get tripped up and do too much. But besides just limiting the quantity of activities, what are some of the pieces of advice we gave families?
Well, one of the main ways that we I can't even talk today. One of the main ways we limited the quantity of activities that the kids were in was we all did them together. So that was the secret to our success. We didn't do too many activities for the kids because we were all going to go together to soccer practice, or the girls had praise dance. And so I didn't take the boys to praise dance, but all the girls went with me to that, right? And then if anybody had a concert or a performance or a game, guess what? We all went together. So we practiced, we used to call it, we were an amoeba. We went everywhere together. So if one of our kids had something, we all sort of went as their pep squad and cheered them on and celebrated. And I mean, obviously they didn't win or do great every time, but we were always the one to circle up with them and celebrate them. And I found that to be pretty valuable.
Well, and I think it also helped reduce the stress in the family.
Yeah.
Because if you're going to do everything in one car or one big van with a bunch of kids and you're all going to go as an amoeba, that forces you to limit how many things you do.
Yeah.
But if you're going to divide and conquer, and dad's going to take these kids here and mom's going to take these kids here, and then we'll meet up for dinner somewhere else, that's going to lend itself to potentially taking on way more than you or the kids can actually handle. You're going to be leaving some places early, arriving other places late, and it ends up being what looks like a disaster. Whereas as an amoeba, you're all together. Mm-hmm. You're not ships running past each other in the night.
Right.
And I think it actually helps reduce the stress and makes it all more enjoyable.
It's a life skill too. I think kids need to know they can't do it all.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, now we'll go to number 8, and that is doing projects with your kids. So I loved doing different projects with the kids. I built plenty of forts with the kids, some tree houses, bird houses, and one of my favorites in terms of the lesson that we shared here was building 2 cornhole sets with my kids.
Yeah.
And I'm an engineer, so I like to make things and design things and put them together and complete the task. But the whole point of doing projects with your kids is not the project. It's the relationship that you're building with your kids, that you are building these cornhole sets with your kids. They are helping you by cutting wood, drilling holes, nailing nails, screwing screws, painting boards.
Yeah.
All the pieces and parts along. And so very briefly, you can listen to the podcast yourself, but in this cornhole project, I thought it was going to be about a 3 Saturday project. It turned into a 3 months of Saturdays project. And I had to keep reminding myself, it's not about completing the project quickly or perfectly. It's about spending time with my kids. And so that was a great reminder to myself. And I want to pass that on to you. Do it with your kids. That's the point, not whatever the project is.
Yeah, and I think that extends to moms too. I wanted to spend a lot of time with my kids in the kitchen. And I just remember, as I have a pattern as I cook, right? So as I'm cooking, I'm cleaning simultaneously. I mean, I've had lots of years of practice of this. You know what? My kids aren't. And so was I going to, by virtue of my frustration with them, kick them out of the kitchen? Or were we going to overcome some of those missteps along the way? Was I going to use it as a training? Was I going to use it as a time to really enjoy being in the kitchen with them? And I'm going to tell you, sometimes my kids got in the kitchen and made an incredible meal or incredible loaf of bread or dessert, and the kitchen was a catastrophe. But the reality was they had really learned something. They had enjoyed themselves. We were all enjoying their creation. The kitchen is something we can work on going forward. So when it comes to activities, whether it's in the kitchen or it's outside with your kids, just make sure you remember this is a process. It's not going to be perfect the first time. It's probably going to take more time than you could imagine, but focus in on those relationships.
That's right. All right, number 10 on our list was newborns, bringing newborns home, incorporating them into the family.
Number 9, not number 10, just so you know.
Let's start that over again. So number 9 on our list is newborns, bringing newborns home, incorporating them into the family. You had 7 newborns. Mm-hmm. What do you remember about how we did family, bringing a newborn into the fold?
I have to say, I like addition better than subtraction. I loved bringing a new baby home to our family. It was just such a sweet time. We didn't learn this at first. So 1 and 2, we thought that's all we were going to have. And then we had number 3. Then we thought we were done. And then we had 4, 5, 6, and 7. It was probably around number 4 that we were like, you know what? We need to really pull back and enjoy this. So when we would bring a baby home, we took off 6 weeks from school. And I mean like really formal school. That's not to mean we didn't do anything, because we did life. So the kids were really engaged. We were all getting to know this new person and celebrating this new person and playing with this new person. And they would help with baths, they would help with diapers, and we would still do a ton of reading. But we would teach them about what it looks like to incorporate a brand new person, to celebrate a brand new person into our family. I think those were some of the sweetest times.
They were so wonderful.
Yeah.
And again, I think so often one of the keys to enjoying life is to do less rather than more. Mm-hmm. If you're trying to do everything, you're going to miss out on the most important thing, being this newborn that's only going to be newborn for a very short period of time.
I know, it just doesn't last.
It goes by quickly. So focus on what's right there in front of you. Mm-hmm. That new precious little life. Look at their toes, count their fingers, look at their eyes, touch their skin, smell them, rub their head.
Yeah.
Just let all the kids be a part of that with you, to just slow down and smell the roses and enjoy this new life.
Right. If we say we value life, if we say that children are a blessing from the Lord, then they deserve to be celebrated when they come home at first. It's also a great way to take care of mom, because if she doesn't feel the pressure to jump right back into all of the school lessons, even if she's planned in advance, recovery from childbirth is a thing. And we need to get back to letting mom have some time to breathe. And so I remember you would take the kids, the newborn, and let me, sneak upstairs and take a little bit of nap. But it's just really powerful and important to do that. And you really are rolling it forward, right? Because as God wills, and hopefully you'll have grandchildren. And so you're already teaching your sons how they can treat your future daughters-in-law. And you're already showing your daughters-in-law how they can welcome in their children, your grandchildren. So all of these things we're talking about, it's not in the short term. You're casting a vision for what family looks like.
That's right. And then number 10 on our list of 10 was the fourth Deuteronomy 6 moment, when you go to bed.
Right.
So half of Deuteronomy 6 happens in the bedroom, when you wake up and when you lie down.
Right.
And so bedtime routines were just as beautiful as morning routines. So our recommendation is, again, don't rush this. This is a great moment that God has given you to be intentional as a parent, to spend time with the kids, to slow down, to ease into that bedroom, to talk with them, pray with them, read books, maybe sing some songs, tell them stories, tell them about your own childhood, and then say your prayers, turn off the light, go to sleep.
Right. It's just the end of the day, right? It's just peaceful. It doesn't need to be stressful. It needs to be peaceful. And you're right. Sometimes it meant that we were sort of running back through the day, and maybe somebody had a bad day, and we'll say, "Well, you know what? God's mercies are new every morning. We'll have a brand new start tomorrow." So just really winding down peacefully is a great gift you can give your kids.
So this concludes Doing Family. I will let you know right now, we have a new series we're going to do in 24 titled How Many Times? It's based on Rachel's book, How Many Times Do I Have to Tell You? We're going to pick 10 of the 68 chapters and do a podcast on 10 of our favorite ones.
That'll be great. We'll look forward to you joining us then.
Well, it's time to bring this conversation to a close. Thank you for listening, and thank you for watching. We hope you'll join us again next time. This is Let's Talk Homeschool, brought to you by Apologia Educational Ministries, and we're your hosts, Davis and Rachael Carman. Have a great day, and until next time, we're walking by faith and enjoying the homeschooling adventure of a lifetime.